Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Right Ambitions podcast, where we discuss all things grammar, English language, writing, and editing. I am your host, Jenny Watts. Thank you for joining me. So today, I would like to talk about a grammar myth that you may have heard and that you may be practicing in your writing. The past couple of episodes, I've talked about some of these myths. One was splitting infinitives, and the other was starting sentences with conjunctions like and or but. So this myth is actually about ending sentences, specifically ending sentences with prepositions. So there's a rule that says you should never end a sentence with a preposition. Well, why not? So let's talk about prepositions first of all. Prepositions position words in relation to one another. So they usually show up before nouns or pronouns, as in, I ran away from the zombie. The preposition is from and the noun is zombie. By the way, always run away from zombies. So prepositions include words before, after, above, over, under, among, between, in, out, on, off. You get the point. So those are prepositions. So why can't we end sentences with any of these words? Well, the simple answer is you can. So there's a quote that's attributed to Winston Churchill, although some sources wonder whether he even said it at all. But it supposedly is in response to someone who criticized him for ending a sentence with a preposition, in which he said, "This is the sort of nonsense up with which I will not put." So again, I wonder if he actually even said that, but it kind of mocks the whole situation. So another quote is from the American poet Burton Braley, easy for me to say. A preposition is a word you mustn't end a sentence with. And some other quotes that express opposition to this rule include one from the writer William Zinsser. I think a sentence is a fine thing to put a preposition at the end of. And novelist Kingsley Amis said, it is natural and harmless in English to use a preposition to end a sentence with. So, they all think it's fine, and so do I. And so does pretty much every other grammarian. So the rule comes from trying to make the English language conform to 17th and 18th century Latin grammar rules. But a lot of English doesn't behave the same way that Latin does, and Latin's kind of a dead language, so what does it know? So it's perfectly acceptable to end a sentence with a preposition, especially if not doing so results in a clunky sentence. So if your sentence begins with a question like what, where, who, a preposition at the end of the sentence could work just fine. What part of town are you from? Okay, that's a preposition, makes perfect sense. I could rearrange the sentence or the question to say, from which part of town do you hail? But really, no one speaks like that. So when you're using infinitives, which is a verb in its base form, and which I talked about a little bit in episode 5, it probably makes sense to end the sentence with a preposition. There's nothing left to think about. Okay, there you go. If your sentence won't make sense without a preposition at the end of it, then of course you need to add it. If you're using a passive voice, like in this sentence, I liked going to the spa because I was doted on. Okay, that makes sense there. If I asked you, what are you working on? That makes sense. But if I left the preposition off of that, it wouldn't make sense. So if I asked, what are you working? I'm going to be waiting for the rest of that question. So it makes sense in that situation. So there are times, though, when using a preposition at the end of a sentence or a question is redundant and unnecessary. So if you ask someone, where are you at? The preposition at is redundant because that question means the same thing if you just say, where are you? So there's no need to add the preposition at the end of that. So there are also things called phrasal verbs, which always include a preposition. So a fine example of that would be shut up. And that's fine to say. So yes, in fact, you can end a sentence or a question with a preposition, and it's perfectly fine to do so. As I mentioned, there are instances where it might be redundant, so just keep that in mind when you're writing. But otherwise, go ahead and end your sentence with a preposition. So another myth has been busted. So that's all for now. Please join me next time. And until then, have a great week, and I will see you later.